We are just 6 short weeks until the midterm election. On this episode of our podcast, we'll talk about what's at stake in this midterm and maybe see a sign of things to come from across the ocean. We'll take a look at what's happening in Italy. With the UN holding its first face-to-face summit since the pandemic, we'll look at this dangerous world we live in. That plus all of the news of the day on this episode of Dale Carter's America.
From the heart of flyover country, he's not on the far right, and he's certainly not on the far left. Like you, he's somewhere in the middle. This is Dale Carter's America.
And before we get to the news of the day, let's talk about our big event, which is coming up quickly. October 6th, we'll be at one of our sponsor locations, Funhouse Pizza, their location in Blue Springs on 7 Highway. And we have, Kurt, a very special guest coming in for that.
Yeah, we have Mark McCloskey, of former Senate candidate of St. Louis fame. You know him. You love him. He'll be there.
Yeah.
Come out and say hi.
So we'll find out what he's up to next, because I know he's going to be doing some things with the Republican Party in Jackson County. We're going to be involved in that as well. They've got a big event coming up on October 9th, is it?
Which event?
That's their deal at the winery.
Oh, I'm not sure.
Yeah, I think they've got a big event coming up that I'm going to MC. I guess I should figure out when it's going to be, since I'm going to be the MC. And Mark is going to be there for that. And then I'm speaking at the Jackson County Republican event on October 20th in Lee's Summit. So some definite talking going on here before we get to the midterm election, a very important midterm election. It's funny, they throw this around a lot, that this is the most important election in our lifetime. This might be close to that. I mean, as screwed up as things are in this country right now.
Yeah, they say that every election, but it seems like every election that's actually true. It's gotten more and more important as we go on. So yeah,
I'm going to pull the "It's my birthday" card, and I'm 59 today.
Yes, happy birthday to Dale, by the way.
Thank you very much. And as I look back over the arc of history that I can remember, Kurt, I don't remember a time when this country was this screwed up.
Yeah,
it's really screwed up right now,
and very divided too, which is a big problem. It's not just policy or immigration or any crime or any of these things that we're dealing with, but we're so divided on the issues.
Yeah. So circle the date of October 6th. It is a week from this Thursday. We will be at Funhouse Pizza on 7 Highway in Blue Springs. Many of our sponsors are going to be there. Bob Watson is going to be there. Oh boy, do I have a Bob Watson story to talk about. I haven't even told you about this yet.
Okay.
But Bob's going to be there, and I may be in the penalty box for what happened yesterday. Little boo-boo with the car.
Oh no.
Yes, I was pulling into a parking lot to meet somebody for lunch, and I take these carb blockers, when I'm going to have a lunch, and I had barbecue right in front of me. It was like, we're going to Smokehouse for barbecue. I'm like, oh, this is going to be great. And I reached down to get my carb blocker, and I'm on autopilot. I'm going to turn right into the Smokehouse parking lot. Well, guess what? Their concrete median goes a little bit further than my autopilot went. And next thing I know, I'm almost airborne. And wow. I hit that thing so hard, Kurt, that my garage door opener fell down from the visor over me.
Yeah.
And broke into 3 pieces.
Wow.
That's how hard I hit that thing. Crushed in the entire front right of my car, which it's at Dale's Body Shop right now. And Bob Watson's office, though, they just jumped to it. I mean, I made one phone call, Kurt, and I had a tow truck. I had an appointment set up at Dale's. I had a rental car set up. Everything was just like clockwork. And I found myself asking, if not for State Farm and Bob Watson, if I was looking for the Gecko or the Limo or whatever that damn thing is, whatever, Flow, if I'm looking for Flow, I mean, I found Bob Watson, and I called 816-229-7878 because Bob's been my guy for 27 years, and I got Terry at the office, and I said, had a little oops, and she's like, okay, and they went into motion. They got it all done, and that's why I have State Farm. Because they react that quickly.
You have a real person that you can call, and a real person that will tell you that
Haven't
you're
told
an
Bob
idiot.
Yet. Bob, exactly. And I may be in timeout at the October 6th thing.
No, actually, I have kind of a similar story. I once, it was late night after a gig, and I was going to 7-Eleven. This is back when I lived in Virginia. I was going to 7-Eleven to get a snack, and I drove into the parking lot and there was a fire hydrant in the parking lot, like on the median.
Yeah.
And I cut the corner too early, going literally like 5 miles per hour, ran straight into the fire hydrant and like totally crushed in the front driver's side wheel well.
Yeah.
I was fine. I mean, it was like I was going so slow, but just because I hit the perfect spot, totaled my car. It was the dumbest thing I've ever done.
I hit it. I hit it going pretty fast because it was like kaboom, and all of a sudden I'm like halfway airborne. I'm like, what the hell have I done here? And then I come back down and I'm like, well, maybe it's okay. I'll just pull into this parking slot. And then I'm like, well, let me try and move. And so I cut the wheel and went. And I'm like, okay, I probably screwed the thing up. So thank you, Bob, for taking care of me all these years and stepping in to do it again. He'll be at Funhouse Pizza on 7 Highway in Blue Springs on October the 6th. Okay, bad narrative for Biden with illegals shipped to sanctuary cities. We talked about that a little bit last week with what DeSantis and Abbott are doing, calling attention to this, getting the media to pay attention to it. Bad narrative for Biden. So what is the answer to a bad narrative for Biden? You got to call play number 3 in the Democrat playbook, and that is Trump, January 6th, Trump. He's a cheat. He's a liar, Trump. So that's what they did. The AG of New York, who ran on not making New York safer, Kurt, she ran on I'm going to get Trump.
Yeah.
That's what she ran on.
I remember very well.
Well, there's a difference here, and if you're not a legal scholar, maybe you don't know. But there are two kinds of suits here. There's criminal and civil, right? Mm-hmm. So pay very close attention here as this woman explains what she did.
I'm announcing that today we are filing a lawsuit against Donald Trump for violating the law as part of his efforts to generate profits for himself, his family, his company.
She's taking herself so seriously.
The complaint demonstrates that Donald Trump falsely inflated his net worth by billions of dollars.
Bastard.
To unjustly enrich himself and to cheat the system, thereby cheating all of us. He did this with the help of the other defendants, his children, Donald Trump Jr., Ivanka Trump, and Eric Trump. Mr. Trump and the Trump Organization repeatedly and persistently manipulated the value of assets to induce banks to lend money to the Trump Organization on more favorable terms than would otherwise have been available to the company, to pay lower taxes, to satisfy continuing loan agreements, and to induce insurance companies to provide insurance coverage for higher limits and at lower premiums.
How long are we going to let her speak?
Let's stop it.
Let's just stop
That's
right
enough.
there. Because, first of all, she says they wanted to enrich themselves. Well, my God, I thought this was the United States of America, and that's what you're supposed to do.
Yeah.
But, these people have not done so much as run a hot dog stand. I've said that over and over and over again. So what she's saying is all of these banks who do due diligence on things like this were completely duped by Donald Trump. There are a bunch of idiots running the banks in New York, and they let him overvalue his things by 100 times.
Yeah. And I really haven't seen anything specific on what exactly was illegal. I mean, you would think if it was illegal, it would be a criminal suit, not a civil suit.
Right,
I mean,
exactly.
all of that just to say that this is just another example of the double standard in our justice system, the evolving double standard in our justice system. As you said yourself, this lady, Letitia James, the New York AG, she came into office saying that her goal was to prosecute Donald Trump. And we saw the raid on Mar-a-Lago. We see, people in solitary confinement for January 6th. We saw just the other day, the FBI raided the home of a pro-life advocate who, was loosely, accused of like touching somebody, like pushing somebody away at a protest or something like that. Meanwhile, you have left-wing activists burning down pregnancy centers. You have people in New York who are let go after committing violent crimes. I mean, the double standard is just ridiculous. And it's really sad because it's clearly a politicization of our entire justice system from top to bottom. The goal is to punish conservatives, to punish Trump and anyone associated with him. And you find the person and they'll find you the crime. That's what it's turning out to be.
Well, here's my point in bringing this up. Biden needed to change a narrative, and he completely got it because the mainstream media went wall to wall with this. Wall to wall with this, and it bumped off, what was going on with moving illegals to sanctuary cities.
Yeah.
They won the day on this, and it's like everything else with Trump. It's a big nothing burger. They blow it up and blow it up and blow it up that they finally got Trump. I even saw the Inquirer or something that showed him behind bars in an orange jumpsuit. So that's what they think they've got. But at the end of the day, it's a complete nothing burger. Maybe there is something there. If there is something there, I'm going to be the one that says, hey, you know what? If there's something there, prove it. Prove it in court.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So we'll see. I'm going to bet, if I were betting on FanDuel, I would say that it's a big nothing burger.
But even then, I have to say, I would take it a step further, because even if there is something there, the fact is that people are being persecuted, unequally, and so it's like, yeah, there may be something there. Who knows? But the point is that they're coming after him because he's him, not because
Right.
he did something wrong, and we should reject that entirely.
Play number 3. Just play number 3. Run that. Okay, Dr. Stacey Abrams. Well, and why couldn't she be a doctor? She is governor of Georgia. She's been telling everybody that. She's an election denier, but she's a Democrat, so she gets a pass on that. So we're going to call her Dr. Stacey Abrams as she makes a declaration on the 6-week fetal heartbeat.
There is no such thing as a heartbeat at 6 weeks. It is a manufactured sound designed to convince people that men have the right to take control of a woman's body away from her.
Are you kidding me? Does anybody buy this or put credibility into it?
It's ridiculous. The level that these people will go to defend abortion is just sick. It's totally sick. And it's actually interesting, because I just learned this yesterday, but there is actually some truth to that, in the sense that when at 6 weeks, it's not like a heartbeat that you can hear like audibly. It's an electrical pulse from the pre-formation of a heart. So there is a heartbeat in that sense, but it's actually amplified by the instrumentation that is used by the doctors. So it's not like you're actually listening to the actual heartbeat. But the fact is that it is a baby that it does have a heartbeat. It has an electrical pulse that's pushing blood through its body, and so. Just the language that she uses, like it's manipulated, like doctors are just plugging into like an MP3 player and putting like heartbeat on Spotify, and just playing it for people, and they're manipulating it to control, so that men have control over women's bodies. This whole narrative is just, it's so tired, and I think it's hopefully getting exposed for what it is.
I don't want to go down on an abortion rabbit hole, because we could spend an hour talking about that. But as Lindsey Graham, puts forward a national abortion conversation, which I know some Republicans wish he wouldn't, bury that like a cat turd until after the midterms anyway. But his thing that he put forward was a nationwide ban after 15 weeks. And of course, the Democrats have jumped all over that. So the question that we should be asking Democrats is there a limit on abortion? And if so, what is it?
I agree.
Because if we can get to a place where the right won't be happy and the left won't be happy, but the big middle of the country can accept it and we can move forward, what is that number? And again, I'm not a woman. I've never been pregnant. I've been around it a lot in my life. But if you find out that you're pregnant and you don't want to keep it, when should we say you should make that decision by?
Yeah.
9 months? There are people out there that would say 9 months.
Yeah. Or after, in some cases. It's really scary, kind of demonic stuff. But yeah, I agree. I think as sort of a hardline pro-lifer myself, I think the ultimate goal is banning abortion entirely. But we have to understand that politics is compromise, and the reality might not be there right now. So we should at least be trying to move in that direction, where we can get some more limitations on abortion in some states, where we can save some babies. We have to take the wins when we can get them, and then continue to work towards that goal.
So ask the question. That's what I'm saying. When somebody comes to you and says, "Oh, you want to take over this whole abortion thing because you're a man and you want blah 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 blah." Okay, what is the limit? What is what do you say?
Yeah.
So put it back on them. Okay, Liz Cheney. Liz Cheney made the following statement about her future in the Republican Party.
Well, I'm going to ask you, will you remain a Republican, regardless of what happens in the next election?
I'm going to make sure Donald Trump, I'm going to do everything I can to make sure he's not the nominee. And if he is the nominee, I won't be a Republican.
Okay. Wow, that just breaks my heart, Kurt. I mean, I don't know how I'm
Yay!
going to move forward.
Clap,
so
clap, clap, clap,
I got an
clap,
idea
clap,
here.
clap.
Why don't we trade her to the Democrats and we'll get Manchin? Because I think Manchin would fit better in the Republican Party. Let's send Cheney over to the Democrats. But here's the problem with that. Democrats hate her.
Yeah.
So she's going to have no country. There's no safe place for her to go.
Well, she's like a punching bag Republican or like she's like a useful idiot to the left. I mean, it's like, you know how they say all these nice things about George Bush now, like, oh, we wish we had George Bush back. He was so reasonable. Give me a break. Like they called him a racist,
they called
fascist
him Hitler.
and everything else. They called Mitt Romney like the most milquetoast guy ever to run for president. They called him a racist, misogynist, every name in the book. They're only saying that about Bush and they're only saying that about Cheney now because they know that she's not a threat. And she'll go on CNN, she'll talk to the Texas Tribune or whoever, and she'll say, oh, I can't stand this new, hard right MAGA Republican. She'll echo the same talking points as the left. But at the end of the day, she's still a Republican. She still has, at least pretends to have some sort of conservative values. So they're not going to work with her, but they're just going to use her to shit on the people that they despise.
Maybe she could go on The View.
I'm surprised she hasn't already. Maybe she has.
Maybe she could be like a permanent replacement on The View. Okay, moving on to California. We've talked about the fact that they have 12.5% penetration on electric vehicles, and they lead the country on that. And by 2030 or 35? That they want to go 100%. I can't get over you
saying 12.5% penetration.
Well, 12. Yeah, well, it's my birthday. Leave me alone. They have 12.5% of the cars on the roads in California are electric vehicles, and every other state in the union, it's single numbers or lower, like hash marks of a percent. Okay, so they lead the country with 12.5% of EVs, and they want to go 100%. Okay, so they were telling folks in California, plug in your cars at night, because electrical usage is lower at night and we can handle this. We can handle 12% of the vehicles, nowhere near 100%. Okay, so now they've shifted and they say now you need to do it during the day because of solar.
Yeah, go figure. I mean, it's like they must have an attention span of like a squirrel in California because this stuff keeps happening. The day after they made the big announcement about 2035 or whatever, they had power grid issues. And then they, up the cost of all their electric vehicles. Now they're messing around with all this stuff. And they have a very short attention span. Either that or the people in power in California think that the voters have a very short attention span, which maybe they do.
Yeah. Well, and it's not that I'm totally against solar because Austin Watterson with Royal Roofing and Solar is one of our sponsors here, and he is going to be at the event next Thursday night at Funhouse Pizza on 7 Highway. But here's the difference. Instead of virtue signaling and you've got to do it for this reason or that reason, how about you could put more money in your pocket? You're renting your utilities right now from Evergy. What if you owned your utilities by having solar panels on your roof? Austin can show you how to get that done and also take advantage of all this free money, these tax credits that the Fed has out there. Call him if you're interested in that because there are a lot more people who are doing it. Austin says it's more people who think like us than think like them because they're thinking with their pocketbook and they're being sold on the way forward. And the way forward is, do you want your electric bill to keep going up and up and up? Now, I have Evergy. Do you have Evergy? I assume you do. You live on the Missouri side. Mm-hmm. I tried to get my budget in hand. I used to pay, in the summertime when we're running 2 pool filters and my wife likes to keep it like 40 degrees in our house. So summertime is like always like massive. So I went to an even distribution of my electric bill, right? And it's gone up twice this summer. Now I'm paying, and I have great windows, by the way. I had a window audit done, and the windows that I had put in years ago are still holding up great. I'm paying $1,200 more a year for electricity than I was a year ago. And that's because of inflation. And you know, that's when it stays on. That's when Evergy keeps the lights on. With their infrastructure, you know, they don't always keep the lights on. So you can get a premium quality roof and a solar solution if you want. And again, the guys at Royal, they do fantastic work on redoing kitchens and bathrooms. And Austin, if you're listening, I need you to come look at my basement because we're going to need to get that done. 816-540-7057. 816-540-7057 for Royal Roofing and Solar. Solar could be the answer for you, but do it for the right reasons. Not so that you can put a sticker on, say, hey, I'm better than you because I've got solar. How about I'm not going to pay Evergy anymore?
Yeah, and I'd like to add to that too, because we've had some pushback from certain people. You know if you're watching this, but yeah, it's not just the reasoning too. It's actually, more importantly, I think, like the usage. You're using this, if you get solar panels on your roof, you're using it for yourself, for your own energy usage, so that you have ownership over your own energy and your own power supply. That is totally different than having a statewide system where you are supposed to be relying on solar, which is not as reliable as other sources on a large scale to support an entire power grid where you have 100% electric vehicles by 2035. That's the criticism that we have of what California is doing, is that they don't have the infrastructure in place, and yet they expect that their entire statewide power grid is going to run on this stuff. That's totally different, and that's why, you know, you can take ownership of your own energy at your own house with this technology, and, you know, still understand that at a statewide level, you're going to have these other systems in place. You're going to have a variety of energy sources in order to support the power grid, so that you don't have people telling you that you need to turn off your AC, you know, keep it to a certain level, only charge your car during the day, because it can't support all of that, you know, at a statewide level.
Yeah. So call Austin if all that makes sense to you, because he's a great guy. And again, you can come meet him on October 6th at our live event at Funhouse Pizza on 7 Highway in Blue Springs. We're going to get that event started at about 5 o'clock, and then by 6, we'll get everybody situated. We're also going to have a couple of chances to win tickets for the Chiefs and Jaguars.
Oh, really?
Yeah, Jim Dingman's going to put those up, and we'll have some other giveaways as well. Bob Watson always brings some fun stuff for that too. So Funhouse Pizza on October 6th at their 7 Highway location. They're also on 50 Highway in Lee's Summit. Okay, gas prices. I mean, it kind of dovetails with what we were just talking about here. This is so funny too, because it's not funny, it's ironic, I guess. Gas prices have been going up over the last week to 10 days, right? So our news source here at KFKF, where I do the morning show, is Metro News, right? Written by our friends at NBC. And, you know, I had heard that gas prices were kind of going up again. And when they were coming down from the record high in June, record high, you've got a chart up. Does that have what the record high was?
Yeah, let me see.
It's like, it was over $5 on a national level.
5.1.
Okay.
510 was the high.
So, you know, when it started coming down, Metro News was writing a story every day about how gas prices are coming down. Things are great. Gas prices are coming down. Because, again, they're trying to help Biden as we get closer and closer to the midterm. So with gas prices going up again, there was nothing on the wire.
Right.
And the VP of news for Metro, you know, I jumped on his ass, I don't know how many times, Kurt, and he said, oh, man, we want to keep it right down the middle. So anytime you think we've jerked it too far to the left, you hold our feet to the fire. So I sent him an email and I said, you guys have been strangely quiet about this. You know, the gas prices are going up again. I guess that hurts the Biden narrative. So he didn't even bother to reply. But on the wire today, on my birthday, Kurt, is the following story. And I'm going to read it just as it's written. Are you ready?
Let's hear it.
All right. Gas prices keep rising. The AAA station survey finds the national average price for regular is up $3.74 a gallon, up to $3.74 a gallon today. By the way, they round up or round down.
Right.
It's actually $3.75 if you round it up. Okay.
Because it's like $3.74,999.
Exactly. So they say that's 2 cents higher, actually 3 cents higher than Monday, and they say 7 cents. It's actually 8 cents higher than a week ago. Okay, here's the final sentence on the story, Kurt. But It's still 11 cents lower than it was last month. That's exactly what they say. So we can play that game as well, because if you go back to January 20th of 2021 when Joe Biden took over, the national average, and again, Kansas City metro area is always lower, but the national average was $2.39 a gallon. So actually, my friends at Metro News, it's $1.36 higher than it was when Joe Biden took over per gallon.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting how statistics can be manipulated. Like the reason I pulled up this website is because we talked about before we started recording how when the prices went down for like 1 week, the White House came out with that big press release, and it was just like a line like this that went down,
Right.
and they're like, gas prices are going down. Well, it was like a chart that showed 1 week of gas prices.
Yeah.
So you can look at the 3-year trend is way up, and then sort of down here at the end. And then, if you look at the 1 month trend, you can be like, oh, look at this. Gas prices are going up, oh, wow. They're really, not doing good or whatever. So it's all about how you frame it. Obviously, it's funny to manipulate the numbers that way, because that's always what they do.
I'm not going to speak for you, but I'm going to say this about me. I'm not a black helicopter conspiracy guy, but if you can't see that the mainstream media out there, ABC, NBC, CBS, MSNBC, CNN, if you can't see that they are trying to rig this game so that Democrats win in this midterm and doing everything they can to help Joe Biden to prop him up, you're just blind. You're absolutely blind. And some Democrats are not blind. The scales are coming off their eyes. We have a chart here. 56% of Democrats and Democrat-leaning independents want a different candidate in 2024. Now, you've got the chart up there. Go through the chart.
Yeah, so we have, this is from ABC News, Washington Post, from sometime earlier this month. We'll get that out of here. And so we have Democrats' preference for the nomination, 35% for Biden, 56% for somebody else. Republicans' preference for the nomination, 47% for Trump, 46% for somebody else. And then 2024 vote preference, 48% Biden, 46% Trump.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's clear that the Democrats want somebody other than Biden based on this poll. I mean, it's just one poll, so who knows? The interesting part to me is this middle section here for Republicans. The narrative right now from the Republican camp and from conservative media is that if Trump runs, he's getting the nomination, like in a runaway. He's clear and far away the leading contender for 2024. And that may be true. Like I said, this is just one poll, but if this poll is to be believed, it's definitely a lot closer than I think people are making it out to be. I mean, it's 1 percentage point.
Well, you know what I want, and I would love to see a DeSantis-Newsom run in 2024, because Newsom is so far out there, and he lives in that bubble of California where it's like they're just giving him a tongue bath every day. Oh, you're great, Gavin. You're great. Your hair looks wonderful. You're just an awesome man. And then he gets out of the bubble and he goes to Texas, and it's like, what the hell? These people don't like me at all.
I wouldn't underestimate Newsom, though.
I wouldn't. But with DeSantis, you get the policies of Trump without the circus that goes with it. We've said that many times before. And the reason that I think that Donald Trump would get the nomination if he ran is because people like DeSantis would not run. They're going to get out of his way. DeSantis wants no part of that. So in 2024, if Donald Trump decides he's going to run, DeSantis will keep his powder dry, and he'll run in 2028.
So you think he doesn't want to be perceived as trying to get in the way of Trump, so he's going to stay out? I mean, that's interesting. I don't know.
I think any Republican with national aspirations will get out of the way of a Donald Trump run in 2024. Maybe. So really the ball is in Donald Trump's court.
Maybe. Yeah, we'll see. That's an interesting theory.
All right, the government, this is not a theory, this is a fact, runs out of money, printed or not, on Friday. So what they're trying to do now, and this is where, I'm telling you, this is where Congress becomes a sausage factory, It's like the sausage being made in Washington, D.C. Horse trading going on. The fiscal year ends on Friday. They don't have a budget, haven't had a budget in I don't know how long. They're doing all this with continuing resolutions, right? So they need another continuing resolution to keep the government open. God, wouldn't it be fun if it just closed?
That would be great.
Yeah.
That would be so great. I remember when, even during, the Obama presidency, there was a couple times when it was pretty close, back when we had John Boehner and all that stuff. And I was like, just let it shut down. Like, I mean, that's the kind of leadership we need from the Republican Party, because the Democrats have been in control, and the weak Republicans have been in control over the narrative on spending for decades now. Yeah. And it's with this looming fear that they hold over the conservatives' head of, if you don't pass this, the government will shut down and people will be out of a job.
People will die.
Yeah. And
children will starve.
Somebody needs to just stand up and say, okay, let it shut down. Who cares?
We'll get into that here in the next section, because we're going to talk about the midterm election preview. What is at stake here? And before we get to what's happening in the United States, interestingly enough, I think what we're going to talk about here started in the United States, with President Biden referring to people who don't agree with him as semi-fascist, right? So we go to a cauldron of fascism, at least before and during World War II, and that is the country of Italy, which had the audacity to elect a conservative prime minister. First female, right?
Yeah, first female. She broke the glass ceiling, man. The media should be, jumping out of their skin.
When we talk about the mainstream media and how they're trying to tip the scale for Democrats and Joe Biden, this is a CBS News report. I mean, you think about CBS, Walter Cronkite. It was always seen as credible, right? Mm-hmm. Credibility was the C in CBS. This is the CBS Evening News take on Italy.
Poised to make a hard right turn, the woman expected to become prime minister leads a party with roots in neo-fascism. Chris Livesay is in Rome.
Italy is revered for its history, reflected in palazzos and ruins and statues. But not all of that history is beautiful, and many fear that one particularly ugly chapter could soon repeat itself. This year marks the 100th anniversary of Mussolini's historic march on Rome, plunging the country into 2 decades of dictatorship.
Man. If you're not watching this on YouTube, you're missing out.
And a Second World War. Today, his fascist party is gone, but many say she is carrying the torch. Giorgia Meloni, leader of the Brothers of Italy. What was once a fringe party has ballooned into the biggest in the country, and it's now poised to lead the most hard-right government since World War II.
The fundamental problem
in Italy is becoming the illegal immigration. Too many immigrants.
Too many immigrants.
To protect the
She wants, for example, to protect the traditional family or family encompassed by mom or dad and
Italy's
sons.
conservative superstar remains fiercely opposed to adoptions and surrogacy for same-sex couples. The fiery 45-year-old is comfortable with some of the hallmarks of Italian fascism, like this motto: God, fatherland, and family.
And that's clearly a post-fascist party with a post-fascist agenda.
How many times have they used the F word in that report on CBS? Okay.
Oh, now, that is like so funny to me.
You've got a speech racked up from this new prime minister in Italy. In her own words, and you're going to have to read the subtitles on this. Let's get to her fascism.
Yeah, let's watch this. Now, this is a little bit longer. It's 2 minutes, but this is such a great speech, so bear with us, and I'll translate. This is what we are doing here today. Why is the family an enemy? Why is the family so frightening? There is a single answer to all these questions. Because it defines us. Because it is our identity. Because everything that defines us is now an enemy. For those who would like us to no longer have an identity and to simply be perfect consumer slaves. And so they attack national identity. They attack religious identity. They attack gender identity. They attack family identity. I can't define myself as Italian, Christian, woman, mother. No, I must be citizen X, gender X, parent 1, parent 2. I must be a number, because when I am only a number, when I no longer have an identity or roots, then I will be the perfect slave at the mercy of financial speculators. The perfect consumer. That's the reason why. That's why we inspire so much fear. That's why this event inspires so much fear. Because we do not want to be numbers. We will defend the value of the human being. Every single human being, because each of us has a unique genetic code that is unrepeatable. And like it or not, that is sacred. We will defend it. We will defend God, country, and family.
Oh my God, that's fascist.
Those things that disgust people so much, we will do it to defend our freedom. Because we will never be slaves and simple consumers at the mercy of financial speculators. That is our mission. This is why I came here today. Chesterton wrote more than a century ago. She's looking for it. Fires will be kindled to testify that 2 and 2 make 4. Swords will be drawn to prove that leaves are green in summer. That time has arrived. We are ready. Thank you.
Wow. Yeah, that's fascist and just revolutionary and all that. And I just can't believe, I come back to this. You ran a report from CBS News that took that speech and made her sound like Mussolini, and they ran the images of World War II.
Yeah, I mean, it's so blatant, the misinformation, to use the popular term these days. I mean, they don't even say how she is radical in any way. They just start with, she's from Italy. Italy is Mussolini. They cut to pictures of Mussolini, and then they just cut to a picture of her. So it's like subliminal messaging. It's indoctrination and propaganda, where you see Mussolini, you see the jackbooted Italian fascists from the 1930s and 40s, and then they just cut to a video of her, and you're supposed to obviously connect the two things based on no evidence whatsoever. And they talk about that party, the Brothers of Italy party, or whatever it's called. Dating back to the time after Mussolini. And that was the party that a lot of people, I've done very little research on this, but a little bit. That's the party where some of the people from Mussolini's party after World War II went and formed this new party. And a big part of it was rejecting the fascist aspect of Mussolini. They wanted to continue the national identity, continue, preserving traditional values without the fascism. And we're also talking about the 1940s. I mean, are we going to look at what the Democrat Party in America was doing in the 1940s? The KKK, segregation,
well, let me take that one, because let me tell you what the Democrats would say to that. All those people in the South, the Dixiecrats, they became Republicans. Only the good Republicans, were up north and all that. Down south, where all this was going on, they became Republicans.
Well, then, I mean, there's no basis for that.
I'm just telling
either.
you, that's what they'll say.
I know.
They'll point to Strom Thurmond, and they'll say if we want to live in the past, let's live in the past. I'd rather live in the future and move forward from here. Yeah. And I just think that what you played there from CBS was completely ridiculous. Yeah. And, she's basically going with God, family, and country. That's what I believe in America. God, family, and country. Does that make me a fascist?
Yeah, and if I can just speak to that speech that she just gave too, I mean, that is so powerful, and it's one of the best clips of a speech. I didn't see the full speech, but it's one of the best clips I've seen in a long time. And we need to be looking in that direction here in America too, and maybe we are, because, we've had this conservative movement going back to Bush and before in a lot of ways, where we've been focusing on tax cuts and, foreign policy and fighting terrorism and all these things. And at the end of the day, that's fine. Capitalism is good. We want free markets. We want people to be doing well. But people care about more fundamental things. They care about God, family, country. They care about being safe in their own communities and not being overrun by illegal immigrants. They care about crime. They care about being able to be proud of their family and heritage, and being able to be proud of where they live and where they come from. And these are things that you see more conservatives and right-wingers, speaking to now. And I think that's very powerful, and it's going to carry a lot of weight.
Well, we're at 6 weeks away from the midterm, and Kevin McCarthy, who, a lot of really red Republicans are kind of so-so on him becoming speaker. We'll see what happens. A lot of folks would like to see Jim Jordan, because there's a ball buster, become Speaker of the House. But Kevin McCarthy gathered the leadership together, and they put forth a plan that centers on politically beneficial policies that would be policy long shots even if the Republicans take back both the House and the Senate this fall with Joe Biden in the White House. They promise lower inflation, increased fossil fuel drilling, a return to Trump-era immigration policies, and an anti-crime agenda that includes a crackdown on prosecutors and district attorneys who refuse to prosecute crimes. The platform also includes red meat for the GOP base, promising to boost parental control over school curricula, investigate the origins of COVID-19, defend the Second Amendment, and ensure that only women can compete in sports. Those are the words of McCarthy.
Any sports.
Exactly. So here's the thing. You say taxes and all that, that's all nice, but we've got other bigger issues and all that. Stop the spend. Well, they have the balls to stop the spend, okay? Since Jimmy Carter's administration put forth a cabinet-level Department of Education, every Republican who's been president or when we've had the majority in Congress has said we need to defund the Department of Education. If Republicans only control the House of Representatives, they control spending. Have some balls and do something that the Democrats are going to scream bloody murder. The Democrats will scream bloody murder if there was a 10% increase in the budget and you made it an 8% increase. They call that a cut.
Yeah.
Okay, so they're going to scream bloody murder no matter what you do. Have some balls and stop the spend. We're over $30 trillion in debt, and with interest rates going up, are what's going to go to the deficit. That's two different things here, deficit and debt. Okay, these are numbers, but these are numbers that matter. So, the deficit is already over $1 trillion. Okay, we can't pay our bills by $1 trillion or more every year. Now, Biden says that's going down. Well, with interest rates going up, it's going to double. So you're going to look at a $2 trillion deficit. And at the end of the year, at the end of this fiscal year, what you can't afford goes on to the debt, and that's how the debt keeps spiraling out of control. So we've got to have some balls, and we've got to stop the spend.
Yeah, and you made a good point that it's like we were just talking about. It's more than just fiscal policy. It's security, securing our borders. It's pushing back on what's happening in our schools. I think these are things that really matter to people, and Republicans need to gain power and then use that power and not be afraid to say that we're putting our foot down on this. We're going to push back on what's happening in the Department of Education, if not completely get rid of the Department of Education. And there's this idea that has been going around for the past couple of decades where it's like, oh, if Republicans do things, then people are not going to like them, that they're going to become unpopular and they won't win re-election. I think that's just not true.
No cocktail parties on K Street. I think that's...
Yeah, exactly. I think that's just not true anymore. I think people want real courageous leadership, and that's why, one of the reasons why Donald Trump is so popular. He didn't get everything that he wanted to get done, and he was not great on some things, but he was a courageous leader, and he actually did a lot of what he said he was going to do. So I hope that combined with what's happening in Italy and other countries, combined with the total shit show that we have now in America, is going to encourage and initiate and put the fire underneath a new, truly conservative, truly right-wing movement in America.
There's nothing wrong with wanting to be able to make money and, a private side economy and all that. Capitalism is good, okay? What's not good is when you're a Democrat and you get people who don't make a lot of money to buy into this whole somebody's got something that you don't have and that's not fair. It's play number two. They run it a lot. And then they give you something. They give you a freebie that they've taken from somebody who earned, okay? So let's say you and I are working, Kurt, and we have federal taxes withheld, right? So the swamp that is Washington, D.C. takes that money and says, okay, you over here, you're not doing so well, so we're going to give you this and we're going to give you that. Well, it's led to record inflation. And the way around record inflation is the Fed has to step in and raise interest rates. So when I was in college, I took macroeconomics. I'm sure you took it too. It's a base level course, right? Did you take macro?
No.
Okay. Well, in macroeconomics, where I went to school in Indiana, the professor came in. It was one of those big classes with like 300 kids, not very personal and all that. And he goes up to the blackboard and he writes Tannstaffel. It was an acronym, Tannstaffel. Do you know what it means?
No idea.
There ain't no such thing as a free lunch. Okay? And we're finding that out in America. There ain't no such thing as a free lunch. Handing out free money, popular with the Democrat base, is hurting the very people that they say they want to help because it makes it harder for them to borrow. Okay? And then you got Bernie on the other side, the far left. He would say they didn't spend nearly enough money.
Yeah.
So where would Bernie take us?
Who knows, man? Into the ground.
So that gets to the whole, and I think this is at the essence of what's the difference here coming in to this midterm election, because Nancy Pelosi will flap her gums and, try and get her dentures to stay in and all that, and she talks about trickle down, and that's their thing, trickle down economy. That goes all the way back to Reagan, right? Mm-hmm. It's like Reagan wanted to reduce regulation, reduce taxes to spur the private side, the supply side, and that rising tide did lift a lot of boats. Okay, what's the alternative to that? It's almost like the abortion conversation, Kurt. It's like, okay, what's your limit, government? Okay, how do you want to do it? Do you want to try and take from the earners in this country, the people who actually create, and then swirl it around in your little swamp mix that you've got in D.C. and then ferret it out as you see? I mean,
yes.
That's what they want to do.
Yes,
that's trickle up.
The answer, yeah.
That's trickle up to them, and then they, it's like a
pump. Well, the irony is that's actually truly trickle down economics, because you give all of the power to the federal government,
and they're trickling it out
to decide who gets what, and they take the money. You make the money, but you don't get to keep the money. They take it from you if you're a producing American in the economy. They take it and then they decide who gets what. So that's truly trickle-down economics.
Well, it gets all the way back to my theory on how this thing ought to be done. We ought to figure out what the role of the federal government is in our lives. The founders have a pretty darn good blueprint for what that was supposed to look like. Okay? Federalism puts the power at the state level. Again, government is best exercised closest to where the problem is. And, it's not Washington, D.C., although they've got their problems in Washington, D.C., too. So if the states are doing what the states are supposed to do, the federal government should really be very limited. And it ought to be doing things like, I don't know, protecting us, right? Yeah. So maybe, with everybody coming across the border, maybe the role of the federal government ought to be, let's fix our border.
Yeah, or if the FBI is going to start investigating private citizens, maybe they should be investigating people who are attacking pregnancy centers, people who are doing drag shows for little kids and, flaunting their crotch in front of 5-year-olds. Maybe they should be investigating that instead of investigating Donald Trump and wasting everybody's time.
So what is the essence of our government? If we figure that out, what the federal government should do, and then come up with a price tag for it, and figure out how we're going to pay for it, it becomes less about, well, we've got to take care of little Johnny or Susie over here because they're not doing quite so well. You're doing great. You should pay your fair share. That's one of his favorite go-tos. Pay your fair share. Let's figure out what government costs, pay for it, and then let's leave money in the private sector where it can do the most good, build our economy, grow our economy. And that's the way you grow an economy. Democrats look at that and go, that's just trickle-down economics.
Yeah. Yeah, the billionaires and the millionaires, whatever, blah, blah, blah. Beep,
I'm
boop,
telling you.
Beep, beep, boop, beep.
All right. So we move on to the Democrats. They do control the House now, not by very much. They have passed a police funding bill in the House as a way to paper over their quote-unquote defund the police position as crime continues to surge. They took no Republican amendments. They took no Republican input. And then the question I would have moving forward out of that is, why is Congress even in the policing business?
Yeah, and my question would be, this is the first time hearing about it, so I don't really know anything about this, but my initial question would be like, okay, so what's actually in this? Because, they name things, certain things to get your attention.
This is the George Floyd bill, right?
Is that what it's called?
I think it's called the George Floyd bill. Because again, they look for
like
things.
That's like a joke, man. I mean, how you can't make that stuff up. That's hilarious.
Yeah.
Wow.
So there you go. That's probably a non-starter. But then they can go back, like Sharice Davids can come into Overland Park and make a speech and say, "We passed a police funding bill because we really care about the police." The last time the Democrats gave a shit about any of this, honestly, was when Senator Joe Biden was on board for the 1994 crime bill.
Yeah.
And they excoriated him over that.
Yeah. I mean, he's spent his entire career since then trying to back away from it. So
yeah. Well, that Corn Pop was a bad dude.
Corn Pop, the bad dude, man.
And he ran with a bunch
the
of bad
kids in the
boys.
pool, they rubbed down my leg.
boys.
Come on, man.
It is a dangerous world we live in, especially if I'm going to be driving anywhere. And
You're probably a better driver
Kurt.
than Joe Biden.
Oh, Kurt, I just have to stop looking for stuff when I'm driving and stop going on autopilot. And that is the lecture that Bob Watson is going to give me. He's given it to me before, and maybe one of these years it will finally catch in my brain somewhere. But I thank Bob for bailing me out of a lot of jams. He's at 7th and Main in Blue Springs, 816-229-7878. Auto, home, life, commercial insurance, even boats. I know we're getting out of boat season now, but he's licensed in both Missouri and Kansas, an incredible human being who has been insuring people like me for 5 decades now. And he's been right there in Blue Springs, but that's not the limit of what he can do. He can, again, write insurance for both sides of the state line. I know some people are listening to this podcast. They've been calling Bob, and he's been writing some business out of it. So Bob's going to be there again at our deal on October 6th. Please make a note of that. We're going to start it up about 5 o'clock. We'll do a live version of the podcast. Mark McCloskey is going to be there as our special guest. A lot of folks love that guy. We love him here. He's been a guest on our podcast before. Yep. We'll find out what the next chapter is for Mark McCloskey. But that's going to be at Funhouse Pizza on 7 Highway in Blue Springs, another one of our great sponsors here. Please come see us and hang out with us. Hang out with some like-minded people as we continue to try and solve the world's problems, even though the other side would call us the name semi-fascist
or neo-fascist or post-fascist they used in that
well, that's
that
for
CBS
Italy,
story.
but I think what Biden called us was semi-fascist.
Semi-fascist.
I'm not even sure what that means. And not all Republicans, just the damn MAGA Republicans, the ones that want to make America great again.
Yeah. Liz Cheney, she's not a semi-fascist.
Again, we can trade her. I think we
she's
can trade her.
just semi-nothing.
Okay, so the dangerous world we live in obviously involves things like China and Russia and what's going on in the Ukraine and all that. Joe Biden had a great opportunity to shame the Russians on the world stage. I mean, think back to when John F. Kennedy was president. I know it's a long before your time, but Adlai Stevenson was the ambassador to the UN in the Kennedy administration with the missiles of October. And he shamed the Russians on the world stage, right? And he called them out on their bullshit because they were completely bullshitting the world that they didn't have nukes in Cuba, and he called them out. So Joe Biden goes to the UN with the Russians threatening nuclear war in the Ukraine, and all he wants to talk about is global warming.
From the day I came to office, we've led with bold climate agenda. We rejoined the Paris Agreement, convened the major climate summits, helped deliver critical agreements on the COP26. We helped get 2/3 of the world GDP on track to limit warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius. And now,
Time out. Is he making that shit up? What is that?
And when helped limit warming to 1.5 degrees?
Yeah, I mean, have they measured that somewhere? And where do they measure it?
No, because that's not even a real thing that's happened. That's the projection from the people who want to push this agenda. That's the totally fake projection that they have made up of what the Paris Climate Accord will do by the end of the century.
And when they had this climate accord, and you've seen the pictures on this, they all flew in on their private jets, including our guy, John Kerry.
Yeah.
So, I mean, could they not have done a damn Zoom call? Did we learn nothing from COVID that you could do a Zoom call?
And also, just on top of that, I mean, all of the climate projections throughout the history of this entire narrative, back to the 70s, have been notoriously bad.
Yeah.
So, I mean, the fact that they think that they're able to project that they're going to lower warming by 1.5 degrees Celsius, it's total BS. It's totally made up. And they're just using that line in order to, push the
It's arrogant
policy.
as well. I mean, do you really think that you can do that? You can't. I mean, the planet is evolving. Is it warming? Probably. I mean, it's been around for 5 billion years. It's been through ice ages and whatever the opposite of an ice age is. It was on fire at one point, So it's evolving over a 5 billion year history, and we are a speck in the history.
Yeah. All right.
Continue.
I've signed a historic piece of legislation here in the United States that includes the biggest, most important climate commitment we have ever made in the history of our country.
The Inflation Reduction Act is the name of that bill.
Yeah, which had nothing to do with inflation.
$369 billion.
Billion.
toward climate change.
Billions.
That includes tens of billions in new investments in offshore wind and solar, doubling down on zero-emission vehicles, increasing energy efficiency, supporting clean manufacturing. Our Department of Energy estimates that this new law will reduce U.S. emissions by 1 gigaton a year.
What does that even mean?
Yeah. So
what's a gigaton?
I'm not a scientist, and I don't pretend to be, and I really don't like scientists anymore. But I'm just going to say that that's made up. That's a fake metric that they just made up. No, I'm joking. But that's the same thing. I mean, as the 1.5 degrees Celsius thing. I mean, it's just projections. It's not actually a real number based on anything in reality.
And how arrogant. Think about how arrogant this is. That he says the United States alone can make all these changes and affect the climate. Meanwhile, you've got India and China and Russia, just shooting up into the atmosphere whatever they want.
Yeah, and India and China, as far as like air pollution, are the two biggest culprits in the world, and also just like trash. I mean, they're throwing trash into the rivers. They're doing all kinds of crazy
we're going to
stuff.
have an all-in. We're all in on this, and I guess his assumption is that when we cripple our economy in the United States, then the rest of the world will jump on board. Then they'll do it.
Yeah,
China, of course, will
once
do it.
we tank our own economy and we tank our own energy independence, then the rest of the world will, totally get on board, and they will totally not be like, oh, wow, America just shit on themselves.
Yeah.
Let's take over.
Is there anything else we need to see out of this speech?
No, I mean, it's more of the same. It's more of the same. But
All
you're right. He took the opportunity when he should have been, addressing Russia, China. I mean, he did talk about Russia in the speech, but not very strongly.
Not at the level he should have.
And of course, he didn't say anything about China, because he has personal, involvement in that, let's just say. So,
yeah. So let's move on to one of the big threats that we have right now, and that obviously is Russia. Okay, so Putin goes into the Ukraine. He thinks this is going to be a cakewalk. I'm going to take Ukraine. We're going to bring it back into the fold of the motherland and all that. And he runs into a Ukraine that's backed by the United States and other Western powers. They're fighting back, and they're making it kind of a tie game here at this point, right? Only his Russian soldiers have started to retreat. He's basically going back to the well. He called up 300,000 reservists, and they're pushing back. And now he says, you know what? If this thing somehow blows back on me and you come into Russia, we're going to use nuclear weapons.
Yeah, those are both headlines from the past week, the 300,000 troops.
Yeah.
And then, and this is the former president, Medvedev, saying that he's not bluffing. This is an article, if you're watching, not a clip, but Medvedev also says that he doesn't think NATO countries would step in if Russia fired a nuke on Ukraine.
Yeah. Well, I think he could be miscalculating on that. Let's just put it that way. And his own troops, I mean, they're done with this thing. They don't want to be there. They're using Molotov cocktails, which were invented in Russia, at recruiting centers in Russia. They're burning down buildings over this. So Putin's got a lot of problems here, but he also has his finger on the nuclear button there in Russia. So he is very dangerous.
Well, yeah, but I mean, I think he understands how conflict and power works. I mean, you have to flex your muscles if you're going to win a conflict. I mean, Trump did the same thing to Putin when he was president. Trump was like, if you move on Ukraine, I have all these nukes. We're going to flatten Moscow, basically, And so, yeah, I mean, that happens all the time. It happened under Kennedy. It happened under Reagan, all through the Cold War. It's all about flexing muscle. It's all about showing how many big guns you have and what you can do with them. And the problem with that is that the United States and NATO are not willing to reciprocate because we have weak leadership. We don't stand for anything. We don't stand for any, good policies or principles as a group or as a country in America. So we have no leg to stand on. So
yeah. Well, he says that the West is using nuclear blackmail, but he's the only one talking about using nuclear weapons. How are we blackmailing him?
I don't know.
Yeah.
I haven't seen that.
You have to get into the mind of Vladimir Putin, which is probably a dangerous place. Then another dangerous part of the world is China and Taiwan. And Joe Biden keeps going out there and saying that if China invades Taiwan, the United States is going to defend Taiwan. And that is not our foreign policy. And every time he says it, the administration goes, that's not right. What the president meant to say is this. So who's running this show?
Yeah. See if this is the clip that I'm looking for here. I just pulled it up. So this is from that same 60 Minutes interview that we talked about last week.
What should Chinese President Xi know about your commitment to Taiwan?
We agree with what we signed on to a long time ago, and that there's a one China policy, that Taiwan makes their own judgments about their independence. We are not we're not encouraging their being independent. That's their decision.
But would U.S. forces defend the island?
Yes, if in fact there was an unprecedented attack.
After our interview
So he just contradicted himself in the same sentence.
Exactly.
He said, we believe in the one China policy, which means no independent Taiwan, and they're standing with China. And then immediately after that, he's asked, will U.S. troops defend the island of Taiwan if there's a conflict? And he says yes. So he's just, he doesn't know what to say. And just like with him talking about inflation and him talking about the pandemic is over and everything else, the administration has to come back and correct the record, because everyone knows that Biden is not really in charge. He's not pulling the strings. He's just a mouthpiece for the liberal establishment in Washington, D.C., and they have to continuously come out and correct what he's saying, because he has no idea what's going on.
We've fallen a long way from leadership between Ronald Reagan and Margaret Thatcher to where we are today. They do have a good conservative female prime minister in England now, London, the UK. Obviously, we've got one now in Italy. Can you imagine if we had a strong conservative leader in the United States to go with those two women?
That would be fantastic.
It would be, and maybe it's something we ought to work for. But we can't get there until 2024. 6 weeks to go until the midterm election, a very important election in this country. So make sure that you get out and vote. I mean, everybody who's registered ought to be out there voting, but pay attention. I mean, again, I said this either last week or the week before. If you take everything into account that's going on in this country and you go out and vote for a Democrat, you're not paying attention.
Mm-hmm.
You're just not paying attention. So wake up, smell what's going on here. It smells horrible. Not quite as bad as NyQuil chicken perhaps smells. But as we leave you today, we'll leave you with this. And there's a serious side to this. And with that, Kurt, I want to mention something I just pulled in before we started the podcast. The DEA is finally on board warning about rainbow fentanyl. Rainbow fentanyl is in this country. It looks like rainbow candy and all that. And if you take it, you're going to die.
Yeah.
That is absolutely true. So then we get to the latest internet stupidity. Got to be the same people who brought you the Tide Pod challenge.
Probably, yeah.
Yeah. So is this real or not real? Are they just messing with us here? Or
well,
what?
let's watch it first, and then we can comment on it.
I've done this in the past, and usually I use about 4/3 of the bottle. And if it's your first time doing this, you can get away with using about a fifth. Season that NyQuil in there just at the right temperature.
With chicken.
You're going to want to let it sit there and sizzle for about, 5 to 30
Gets a nice
minutes.
blue
Make
shade.
sure you're constantly flipping over the chicken.
Look
you
at what
don't
he's
want to
flipping
give
it
one
with.
side more attention than the
What
other.
is that?
Oh, sometimes
It's a
the
hair
steam really makes you sleepy.
straightener.
Whew. Oh, fuck. What you're looking for is that blue color right there. All right, we can go ahead and turn it off. Ooh, yeah, that's steam, baby. Drain the unused right back into the NyQuil can, just like so.
Oh,
Boom.
man, that's
NyQuil
disgusting.
chicken.
It's like not even remotely cooked either.
Absolutely. Oh, it's disgusting. I mean, I'm old school. I like a little barbecue sauce on my chicken. But one of my friends, Carla, when we talked about this on KFKF, said, I wonder if the cherry NyQuil flavor makes it better.
It's probably like spicier or something.
Yeah.
It's your spicy NyQuil chicken.
Don't do no one who listens to this podcast would do anything stupid like this.
That's
but there's stupid kids out there who look at this stuff and go, "Oh, I want to try it."
If you watch that, it's clearly a joke. I mean, it's clearly not serious. He says 5/4 of the bottle. He's flipping the chicken with like a hair straightener. It's clearly a joke, but people are so stupid these days that the media has to come out and say, "Don't cook chicken in NyQuil," because people are so stupid and gullible that they may actually do it.
There were gullible people who did the Tide Pod challenge, right? So there's stupidity out there, Kurt. You can't underestimate
There
it.
are gullible people that think that climate change is the biggest threat to our country.
So this is actually a news story. When you cook cough medicine like NyQuil, you boil off the water and alcohol in it, leaving the chicken saturated in a super concentrated amount of drugs in the meat. So if you ate one of these cutlets completely cooked, as they weren't in the video, it would be like you're actually consuming a quarter to half a bottle of NyQuil.
Nice.
Now, I've had NyQuil before. It's disgusting. I can't believe. Again, it's a complete joke. Maybe the cherry flavor tastes better. But if you want my opinion and the thoughts here at Dale Carter's America, the podcast, stick with barbecue sauce, don't you think?
I agree.
All right. Until October 6th, when we see you live at Funhouse Pizza, 7 Highway in Blue Springs. For Kurt, I'm Dale, and this is Dale Carter's America.
The views expressed on Dale Carter's America are Dale's and Kurt Wheeler's. They do not necessarily reflect the views of KFKF or Steel City Media. Comments can be sent to dalecartersamerica@gmail.com. Check back for weekly episodes. Subscribe, spread the word, and give us a 5-star review. Thanks for being a part of Dale Carter's America.